Welcome back to Bite Size Sports and Carnage Media this morning. Happy Sunday, everybody. Hope you got your fantasy football lineups all set. If you have any questions, feel free to fire away in the chat. Happy to talk a little fantasy football with you as we get ready for that 1 p.m. slate. However, we are here today to talk about the big fight weekend. We have Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul, John Jones versus Stipe, and of course, Serrano versus Taylor, which may have been the big victor as far as the big picture goes. We'll get into all of that. So let us know your thoughts in the chat on all of the big fights. Would love to hear everybody's thoughts on Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson, specifically as we are going to start the show off with that. But of course, if you got thoughts on not only John Jones versus Stipe last night, but the post-fight press conference where Jones has talked about how he won't be fighting Tom Aspinall and in fact wants to fight Alex Pereira. Very interesting. His thoughts on that. We'll just dabble. We'll touch on it right now before we focus on it later. Was that he no longer wants to fight dangerous up-and-comers, but wants to fight dangerous established champions. So let me know what you guys think about that. So get those thoughts in the chat as well. But let's start things off here with Tyson versus Paul. A major disappointment to any of you that were maybe shown 4-year-old clips of Mike Tyson coming into this bout that perhaps thought maybe against your own better judgment that just maybe Iron Mike was going to have a chance here against someone half his age. And unfortunately, for even those like myself who were hoping we might see at least a flash of old Mike, it was not there at all in an incredibly one-sided fight that almost felt like it shouldn't be going on. Jake Paul acknowledged afterward that he did not go for the finish because he didn't want to hurt someone who didn't deserve being hurt, which is a whole can of corn to open, really. When you're talking about the fight game, there really shouldn't be anybody in there that can't be hurt or that your opponent is unwilling to hurt, because that really starts to dig into the whole integrity of the sport in the first place. What are we all doing here if you're not in there to hurt somebody? Not in like a vicious sort of like evil sort of way, but the idea is like it's a combat sport. You should be fighting for the win. I know a lot of people discussed the idea that this fight was rigged. I don't necessarily know about all of that, but of course, if Jake Paul is pulling his foot off the gas and in the final 10 seconds just gives Mike Tyson a free shot, which he doesn't take, I can understand people having some thoughts about this. And even if it wasn't rigged or scripted, I can certainly say I don't think it was scripted, but it was obvious that if Tyson was giving all that he had, he probably shouldn't have been in there. And Jake Paul obviously clearly was not giving all that he had in this fight. So what was the point? Who won? We will get into all of this. The big picture here, was it a net positive or negative? Let's check out the chat first, though. What is up, John? Was that some sort of spleen kick that folded Stipe? Possibly. That thing was nasty. And let's go to his Tyson Paul take here, and then we will talk about Jones and Stipe here soon. John says, I don't know how we got excited about that. They shouldn't even be able to drum up that much excitement like the fight is going to be anything worthwhile. And I think that's how we got tricked. Those of us that did was, old clips from when Tyson was prepping for his Roy Jones Jr. fight in 2020, I believe. That was probably a lot. And Jones was saying that during the broadcast. He's saying, man, Mike just doesn't have his legs under him. Look at his legs. They don't look anything at all like the guy we saw 4 years ago. He could barely keep his balance just from throwing his own punches. So again, I agree with you here, John. How did we let ourselves get excited about this? This was a fight that I never thought would happen. When the first one, he had to be replaced. Mike Tyson had to be replaced. I thought, okay, well, this was the game. They're just trying to drum up attention for social media and to draw more potential like pre-sales, I guess, and then hope that people will stick around for a Mike Perry fight. But it ended up happening, lo and behold. And what up, Advent? Welcome. He says it was a money grab fight. 100% feels that way. I don't know about these clauses. I will say I've seen what I believe to be a lot of disinformation, misinformation as it pertains to uh, the contract that was signed. I've seen people on TikTok on a green screen pointing at what looks to me is just a Microsoft Word doc that has bulleted items listed. You can't see the whole document. There's no reason to believe that any of those stipulations that were in the contract are actually true. The idea that Tyson would lose money if he knocked Jake out by a certain point, or that he would gain more money by lasting more than 4 rounds. I don't know. I haven't seen the contract. I don't know if any of that stuff is correct. And I would just press X to doubt until I saw it myself. And that would be my advice. But if anyone has seen anything that looks legitimate to that end, please feel free to let me know, share it, join the Discord, send it over to us in our Discord, and I will gladly pull it up and we can take a look. But I think there was a level of understanding between the two fighters as to how that thing was going to go. And for influencer fighting, I think that might be the end of it right there. Now, net positive to the sport, I think, and we're going to talk about it when we get to this topic right here, Serrano versus Taylor. There is something good that came out of this whole Netflix debacle, and we will talk about it. But to stick with just the Tyson Paul of it all for the moment, as Advent says, I'm just glad I didn't stay up to watch it live. The fights leading up to the main event were better. That is true, with the exception of the opening bout, which I don't believe was a good opener for the card. My opinion. I understand we had two very big brands to start that off, but that was not good boxing, in my opinion. What was it? Gorat versus I have it here. There were good fights though. Barrios versus Nunez. That was a great fight. The Serrano Taylor fight, completely uncalled. I have a little line that I like to say when we're doing Carnage Media pay-per-views, where I'm glad nobody's paying me to judge this fight. That's usually my go-to when it's a close, hard-fought battle. For the love of God, you could have paid me to judge Serrano v. Taylor, though, and I don't know how they got that one wrong. The stats speak for themselves. Threw more punches, landed more significant blows, hit them in a more efficient clip, and also Taylor got a point taken away for a headbutt. So I have no idea how Serrano comes out the loser on this one, but it really helped put female boxing on the map for a lot of people that otherwise have not watched it yet. And as someone who does watch very talented amateur boxers all over the Midwest, male and female, that part is awesome, because here in 13 days, I will be doing play-by-play for an event in Lima, Ohio, where there are 2 women headlining that boxing event, and it's going to be a great main event. And I love the fact that more people will be paying attention to that aspect of the sport. And that's where I say potentially, is it a net positive? I don't know. Um, I don't think that big ticket boxing is really in a good place right now, generally speaking. Influencer boxing was a bit of a shot in the arm. Uh, in it's sort of like a Yankee sense, sports are good when you have villains. People love to have someone to hate, and in combat sports, especially, this even goes to pro wrestling. The most marketable thing you can have really is someone that everyone wants to see get their ass beat. So in that sense, I have always been one that said, I hate Jake Paul with every fiber of my being, but it's good for the sport. It's better to have villains that we want to see get knocked out. But at this point, with him not fighting anyone even remotely his age, I believe Nate Diaz was the youngest, the semi-retired MMA fighter, just known for his ability to take a beating more than anything. Not one of the greats when it comes to his technical fighting skills, not one of the best records you'll ever see, but just an absolute uh, tough as nails guy with a chin of iron. Like, he will take as many beatings. He was 39, all right, and not a boxer when Jake boxed him. So to that extent, I think that if he doesn't fight somebody real anytime soon, that well is going to run dry. There's a lot of great boxing all over the world. We just don't get as much access to it. And so I do think boxing overall will continue to grow. But the idea that the main event was such a letdown, I do see that potentially having a negative impact to other large upcoming boxing events. I hope not. I hope people don't think that, oh, we've got a world title fight here, one of the best pound for pound fighters in the world going after a title, and somehow that's going to correlate to a Jake Paul influencer fight. Like, no, these two things are not the same. Um, but so short term, probably a negative on the male boxing side, but a big boost to women's boxing having Serrano versus Taylor with a admittedly very controversial finish that's going to set up for the trilogy part 3. I think that thing. I heard someone say that one's going to be in a soccer stadium in Europe now. Like, I don't know if that's true. I hope it is, though. That would be phenomenal. A lot more fight fans can tune into this and appreciate it. Let's jump back to the comments. I think I've left a few of them over here. John says, wildest cut I've seen in a few weeks. Advent, just in Minecraft. We won't even read that one for you. Lee, what's up, Lee? Welcome. Thank you for stopping by. It takes a certain kind of person to watch a 60-year-old guy fight a 30-year-old. I'm 80, and in no way am I going to let a 50-year-old man hit me. Yes, I think there is something to it. If it were anyone other than Mike Tyson, I believe Mike Tyson is this mythological figure to a lot of people. And again, because of the unfortunate way that social media works now, and I don't see this getting any better. And shout out to Hideo Kojima, who tried to warn us with his PlayStation 2 classic Metal Gear Solid 2. He tried to tell us exactly how the internet would work, but with all the bad clips of stuff from 4 years ago, 6 years ago, where we saw an older Mike Tyson and thought, oh, wow, he can still do it. He's still training daily. Jake Paul's not a real fighter. And because he's not a real fighter and he only fights retired NBA players and retired MMA fighters known for their grappling, like, okay, somehow there was this mass psychosis where we all tricked ourselves into thinking that this was a possible outcome where we could see something good come from Tyson Paul. But I think Lee is speaking rationally here. It's the cold bucket of ice water that we all had dumped on ourselves at around 1 a.m. Saturday morning, or whenever you woke up, if you were spared watching this. Netflix had a very tough time. I'm not going to give them a hard time, by the way, as somebody who does live pay-per-views, live stuff all the time, to do something that big. and to have it be the biggest thing you've ever done. I understand there were some buffering issues. I understand we got to see Mike Tyson's butt cheeks. That was hilarious. Overall, I honestly thought the crew did a pretty good job. They need some better commentary. Hi, Netflix. Hello. Pro fighting commentator right here, would love to apply. I will do it for free. I just want those Tony Stark glasses that your lead man had. But Rosie Perez, bless her heart, did as best as she could. And Roy Jones had to stop himself from slapping our lead commentator at one point as they were arguing whether or not Mike Tyson has been known to chew on his boxing glove throughout his career. The whole thing was fun, a bit of an experience. I think Netflix will continue to get better. And have they, just like they did with cable television, are they beginning to put the final nail in the coffin of pay-per-view events in general, right? Like, are we going into a space where in the next few years there just won't be pay-per-views? It's hard to imagine now because ESPN charges you $150 a year and then $150 an event to watch their pay-per-view stuff on ESPN Plus. But with the numbers Netflix drew here, if they continue to have successful events like this, how will that impact the pay-per-view ecosystem and the way things work with sponsors? This is a lot goes into this stuff. So as someone who works in the industry, I am very interested in the outcome, how this the ripple effect of this Netflix event. But let's check back in with the chat. Nate, what's up, brother? Saying hello from Palm Springs. That fight was a friggin' joke. Hope you are enjoying Palm Springs, brother. Thank you so much for hanging out with us while you're down there. He says Jake Paul needs to actually fight someone his age and an actual boxer that still boxes. Yeah, he did that once. That would be the one L on his record. So it's very strategic. I don't see him fighting anyone real anytime soon because then the grift would be exposed. Sorry to say it, but it is what it is. And is Jake Paul a better boxer than me? Absolutely. Is he better than the people that I see on the regular Friday or Saturday nights, whether it's in a small town in Ohio or Indiana or West Virginia or Kentucky? I don't know. I don't think so. I think I saw some guys at OCL 32 that would put Jake Paul to sleep. So again, it's one thing to be better than any of us out here walking the streets at fighting. I'm not saying that he doesn't know anything about fighting. I'm just saying he's not a pro boxer, and that's why he doesn't fight pro boxers. And it's the only way he can get any money out of this is to continue to fight these favorable matchups, try to find names that people will recognize, with all of us continuing to hope and pray that maybe this will be the one that knocks this idiot out. And that's the business model. Like that's what he's doing. That's what's going on. And I do think that those returns will continue to diminish, especially now. This was a bad look, right? There's the only kind of positive takeaways from this are good for Mike Tyson to go get that big payday, just to stand in that ring at all at 58 years old, where he can barely keep his balance after throwing a punch. He does things that a lot of men never have the courage to do, probably myself included. I get very close. I think ringside is about as close as I'm ever going to get. So of course, tip of the cap to him for doing that. And as we've already talked about, big boost for the women's boxing game this weekend. But outside of that, I think that this influencer boxing stuff is going to go away slowly but surely. And people who liked the undercard will hopefully just realize that if you're an MMA fan who hates the fights that end up with somebody laying on top of somebody, and then this is me speaking as a casual, obviously it's much more intricate in that, and there is a lot of value and a lot of entertainment from watching two great grapplers wrestle in an MMA match. But if that's not your thing and you find yourself yearning to stand them up, what you really want is kickboxing and boxing. And if you would just go seek that out and watch that, you could then help cultivate these other sports that they're there for you. There are people that want to perform for you. They want to go do this thing. They want to knock people out. Lots of incredible action to be had. It's just not always going to be limited. It doesn't always have to be in the octagon. You can go watch some boxing, watch some kickboxing. For the love of God, let's get Muay Thai more popular to a common audience. Like, those dudes are some killers, man. Like, I'm telling you, you like Muay Thai if you like combat sports. I'm telling you, trust me, you would enjoy it. Let's get back to the comments here. Advent says, I'm only 37, way over fighting for fun. Getting hit sucks. Yeah, you sound it sounds like Mike Tyson on Friday. Did y'all see the camera dude get kicked by the cheerleader? I laughed so hard my kid got confused. Yeah. See, yes, I did. And yeah, it was a hilarious moment. I swear, you get something like that at almost every show. You just have to hope that the producer is on somebody else. And that's where a quality producer, shout out to our dude Wade over at Carnage Media. You got to kind of have eyes everywhere. You got your screen with the masters, you know, so you've got like all the different cameras turned on so you can see everything, and you just kind of have to see what's coming and hopefully switch. But how do you see that one coming? You kind of can't avoid it. John says, I avoided it and instead threw a bunch of tipped interceptions in Madden. This was absolutely the card to just bring a second TV down and just kind of do whatever you want to do and just have it on, so that way you could kind of tune in and tune out. There were some great fights. That comeback that Nunes almost had, that was a great fight. Just not quite enough to get the W, but there was some good stuff on the undercard. It just, man, staying up for that. The main reason I did it was for this program and these two channels to be able to talk about it. It was not something I would have stayed up for my own personal enjoyment. Unlike last night's event, which I would have watched and was disappointing for some different reasons. But let's round out the comments here before we switch gears back to the octagon. Nate says, just speaking, but if it's a reasonable cost, I'd do pay-per-view more often for other sporting events. Problem is, doubt they'd do that. If we can speak honestly, just amongst friends here for a moment, I would gladly take a pay-per-view option for every Colts game. Give me the ability to pay you whatever it is to just let me watch my team's game this week, and then offer a package where I can buy the whole season, or I can, if I happen to be a fan who lives in my team's market. I don't, but if you're one of those fans, you know, maybe it's the away games, whatever. But if you could parcel out sporting events and make them pay-per-view, Nate, I am in agreement with you there. I would have a hard time paying for things that used to be free, right? So if you're, you know, for instance, maybe the NBA playoffs, but so NCAA tournament, for instance, they have games on True TV and stuff now. I'm not paying for those channels. So I'm limited to what would just be on CBS or something like that. So, but if there was an option for me to buy a package that allowed me just to watch every game of the tournament from my phone or from an app, I would absolutely do that. So, and maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's not the death of pay-per-view, but it's just going to be in a different form. But we'll see. It's interesting. And of course, it has to be Netflix again. They just can't learn a lesson or leave well enough alone. They just got to come in here, ruin things for everybody else with promises of that can't be fulfilled, and a business model that almost certainly will never be profitable. But hey, it is what it is. Thank you, Netflix, for testing the boundaries of this space. We love it. Nothing is really free. That's a good point, Lee. That is a great point. If anything is free, you're usually the product. See, you guys are You guys are the product here, right? I don't have anything to sell you, I promise. But it is good to know if something's free, it's probably selling your information somewhere. But I'm sure YouTube's not doing that. This is the part where I have to say very nice things about YouTube so we don't get taken down. Let's pivot to UFC 309, John Jones versus Stipe Miocic. We're going to go back to the very first comment of the day, which was from Johnny. Was that some sort of spleen kick that folded Stipe? It would have to be something like that, I would think. Initially, just from the location of it and the fact that he got him right with the heel, I honestly thought ribs. Right? I thought like broken ribs, and who knows what other damage might have happened depending on how badly the ribs were broken. Did anything get punctured? Did anything get scratched in there? That was my first take from that. But the longer the post fight went on, it seemed like, Stipe said he was okay. Um, didn't really appear as if the ribs were broken. So it probably was some sort of spleen kick, maybe hit a hit an organ. It's also very possible that just completely got the wind knocked out of him, right? That much force. And I could imagine that would make you kind of just freeze up for a second if all the oxygen is just shoved out of your lungs, and kind of take you a second, because it looked almost right after that kick connected that he was frozen in time there for about a second, and then Jones was able to come in and finish it. And I honestly thought that fight was going to be over. I think it was the round before, right? Just those, I'm surprised he survived all those elbows in the first place. um Good chance he probably could have gotten a concussion at any point throughout that ground and pound. Those elbows are vicious. For those who don't know, the only reason Jones has a loss on his record is because of a vicious 12-6 elbow that was ruled illegal, that I believe now would be deemed legal. Just the worst place you would ever want to be in the world of mixed martial arts is underneath John Jones, with those elbows coming down. And so the fact that it took damn near what felt like 50 elbow strikes for him to finally get a cut on his cheek was impressive on its own. That dude's head is made of granite. Thank you, Lee. He said, great show, headed to football. I will be headed to football here very soon. So that's a great warning shot there. We got about 18 minutes to kick off. I got to give myself 5 to 10 minutes to double check those lineups one last time. So we'll be here with you guys for just a few more. Thank you to everyone who has tuned in. If you have any more thoughts on the big fight weekend, or if you have any questions or thoughts about your fantasy football matchups tonight or lineups this afternoon, go ahead and fire those away in the chat as well. The last thing I really want to talk about as far as UFC 309 was the pre-fight and post-fight press conferences. At one point, Dana was asked if the winner of Stipe and John Jones should fight Tom Aspinall. He said yes, he did believe that. And Jones, at the very end, after the crowd was kind of chanting a bit and having some fun, but I paraphrasing here, he kind of told him, just, shut up, stop that. And then after the fight, Jones, as we mentioned at the very beginning, said that he isn't interested in fighting dangerous up and comers, but is only interested in fighting dangerous established champions, and says that he, for his next fight, wants to fight Alex Pereira. And on one hand, holy shit, yeah, I get it. That's a super fight. And that those were his words as well. He wants to fight super fights. So interesting there. Is he ducking Aspinall? Obviously, that's a narrative that's going to be out there. Aspinall is the interim champion. So it's a very flimsy argument, in my opinion. I don't want to fight dangerous up and comers, dangerous established champions. Well, I mean, he's got the belt, he's got the interim belt, which, you know, probably wouldn't have been needed to be created if anybody else was the current champion, but that's neither here nor there. So what do you guys think? Is Jones dodging Aspinall? Do you agree with him that at this point you just want to see him fight giant names? Is there anyone after Pereira that he could fight? Let's say he wins that. Is it just time to retire as champ? Uh, John says that John's the greatest. Yeah, he really is. As much as I personally don't love it, I really wish. Imagine if his brothers fought pro. Could be incredible. What an amazing family, athletically speaking. The fact that his brothers can be just solid NFL players and that he could be arguably uh, the greatest fighter of all time. And it's incredible, his reach. I don't think he's ever been in a fight where he didn't have the longest reach, something like 84 inches. Incredible. So he has these physical gifts and it's an advantages. It's kind of like watching Michael Phelps in a pool. We're like, this dude's built like a dolphin. And it doesn't take anything away from the work that they do, but it's just sort of it's when people say they were built for this, those people, it's real when you're talking about John Jones or Michael Phelps. Like they really were built for what they are doing. I really wish John Jones had made a lot of different decisions outside of the octagon. Um, he's a villain to me. One of the, again, to go back to the Jake Paul side of it, he's the Yankees of the MMA for me. I want nothing more than to see someone beat him. Um, but at the same time, I would never argue that he's not the best there is right now. It'd be hard to make that argument. Now, maybe this upcoming fight with Pereira would give it some credence should he lose that, but I will believe it when I see it. Some final thoughts on UFC 309. The co-main was very interesting. I love how much the crowd loved the backdrops. I don't know how effective that really is. I cannot wait to talk to either Gates Cook or just one of our other co-hosts if we have somebody on the next pay-per-view. So whether the next time I get to interview an MMA fighter or the next time I'm at the desk and I've got one sitting next to me doing color commentary, I'm going to ask them how effective dropping Oliveira on his back like that really was, because I think it was kind of just something that looked pretty cool. And for what it's worth, the idea that he was able to stand up with a man on his back choking him out twice, like that part alone is impressive. But the way that the fans oohed and awed for those backdrops, I don't really know that they were really doing much to get him out of that predicament, other than just burning out a ton of energy. But it looked cool. And calling out Conor McGregor of all things. Would you guys want to see Conor McGregor fight again in the octagon? I think it's over for him. I think if he comes in, it's going to be a short night and it's not going to be his night. I think Conor McGregor's future is as a WWE superstar. I think he'll be the next one to have a Ronda Rousey-esque transition where, because of his name recognition and again, a bit of that real life villainy, I think he's a guy that they could come in much like they did with Logan Paul, and he'll be a heel. There won't really be any way to make Conor McGregor anything other than a heel, but his personality, he's a natural fit for it. And if he applies himself and learns the way of pro wrestling, and I'm probably even just half as well as he applied himself when he was climbing the ranks of the UFC, I think he would make a great personality for it. I don't know how he'll look in the ring. He could be decent in the ring, but I think that's his future. I don't know that he's got any more quote unquote real fights left in him, but he could certainly draw money for a few more years, I believe. And somebody again that I would just love to see get knocked out. Because hey, there's a guy who will punch a 60-year-old in a bar because they refuse to drink his cheap liquor, and then the guy Connor goes and buys that bar so that that old man can never go there again. That's the level of petty we're talking about here. So yes, I personally would love to see him come back and fight whoever just to get knocked out. And then I guess send his ass to the WWE. I don't care. We should have gotten a lot more fight. Yeah, and this goes back to the Jones thing where, I was complaining a little bit. John says, yeah, we should have gotten a lot more John Jones fights during those times he was suspended. Has to hurt to be DC on the microphone. And the fact that they have a 3-man desk, and when it was time to walk away from the desk, take the microphone and do the introduction about how John Jones is the greatest of all time, they picked Daniel Cormier to do that. Y'all had to do that to him. We'll talk about, people were saying Mike Tyson went through a humiliation ritual by showing his ass cheeks on Netflix. I think DC just went through his humiliation ritual, having to put over John Jones, knowing damn well we've all seen the footage. We've seen the footage of poor DC almost tearing his ACL trying to stomp a hole into the concrete ground because Dana White has to tell him that John Jones tested positive for cocaine. And for the third time, they aren't going to actually fight, or however many times it was. An entire UFC card was canceled because of John Jones. So again, I will acknowledge that he's the GOAT. I will also acknowledge that he's got an 84-inch reach and yet still decides to poke people in their eyes with his fingers. So he's got all the skills, still fights dirty sometimes, and outside of the octagon in no way carries himself like a champion, is in no way a role model for anybody outside of, again, if you want to watch what he does in the ring and try to emulate that, more power to you. That makes perfect sense. But everything outside, it's just been a letdown. It does generate attention and get people's eyes on it. But he and Connor really both, like, there are a couple of people who at different times have just kind of held their belts ransom. And it's felt like entire divisions of UFC really couldn't move on. They get stuck because the top guy is just out being an idiot. But he's such a big name, draws so much money that Dana won't do anything about it. And again, I'm not necessarily going to begrudge the boss man for that. I understand. But there's part of me that just can't let that part go, right? Where it's like, yeah, I get it. You're great. We get it. But the sport would have been a little bit better if you were maybe a bit more of a team player at times. After Roadhouse, I can't take Connor seriously. And I think that may be where we're at too with him. I don't know if anyone can take him seriously. And I don't know how he gets into fighting shape without the juice. Let's come on. I mean, that guy, there are some, allegedly, okay, this is a comedic bit for entertainment purposes only. But you get all swollen and red. Just listen, I'm a wrestling fan. I've been watching dudes on steroids since the late 80s. All right. Come on. Yeah, I'm a whiskey guy. If I drink, it's whiskey, neat, or on the rocks. Proper 12 is dog shit. See? That's America's ass. Yeah. Look out, Steve Rogers. Mike Tyson is here for you. Some final thoughts. I thought I did get a chuckle out of Jake Paul coming out to In the Air Tonight. Everybody remembers that famous hangover moment. I was worried for a second, like, what if they both come out to the same song? But anywho, let us know if you're watching this in the future and you're not watching this live. Once again, leave us a comment letting us know your thoughts on the Netflix presentation. So the future of pay-per-view. Are you going to be watching more events on Netflix? What are your thoughts on influencer fighting? Thoughts on John Jones's next UFC opponent? Any of that stuff, let us know. Let's see. We got some thoughts here from Lizzie. Cosmot will kill Bo. Gilbert Burns is former world champion black belt jiu-jitsu, former UFC title contender, fighting Kamaru, and Kazmat wrestled him to the ground. Yeah, Bo is an interesting one. That post-fight interview is very telling. I kind of get where he's coming from, talking about how he hasn't had all these fights. I need to go back and watch the post fight interview, because it was almost sort of like he was kind of going against the expectations that have been set for him, and I really don't know um, how, like, I don't think he's ready. Like, I don't I not that he's not good or won't be good, but I just don't think he's close to the top level right now. So I kind of agree with you there, Lizzie. So thank you all for tuning in. Shout out to the chatters, John, Lizzie, Advent, Lee, Nate. We appreciate you. I got to get ready for some football lineups here. What's John say? When you get out of here, look at Nate Burleson. He just power bombed a folding table. Okay, well, I don't want to miss that. All right, gang. Hey, leave a comment on your way out if you like live content, and especially in football season. If you're an NFL fan, come check us out on Bite Size Sports Tuesday nights with John and the boys at 9 p.m. Trevor and Josh talk fantasy football Wednesdays at 9:15 p.m. And James and I talk the NBA while previewing Thursday night football every Thursday at 7 p.m. So don't miss the live shows over on Bite Size Sports if you happen to be catching the Carnage Media version of this stream. Thank you all who showed up at a little impromptu stream. So I am very grateful for everyone who was here. We will see you all next time, gang. Y'all have a great Sunday.